past the clouds, over the dark night. She reached up to the sky of stars and caught the red-hot light of the North Star.
Greetings and welcome back as always. You know, in the wake of the Friday fiasco in Alaska, the Washington Post now reports U.S. and EU provide fresh details of giant trade pact. The deal is still not final, according to the Post, and officials have weeks or even months of negotiations ahead. Well, that prompted me to wonder, when is a trade pact not a trade pact? Well, let's start with when those responsible for negotiating it admit the deal is not final and officials have weeks or months or of additional negotiations to iron out remaining issues. Does this framework glaringly expose the complete and utter humiliation of Europe as its historic decline into the U.S., into the status of a U.S. vassal? Let's connect some dots and find out.
Connecting the Dots with Dr. Wilmer Leon, where the analysis of politics, culture, and history converge.
Welcome to the Connecting the Dots podcast with Dr. Wilmer Leon, and I am Wilmer Leon. With each show, my guests and I provide insight and analysis into current events and the broader historical context in which most of these events take place. Let's look quickly at one of today's headlines, and I want to tie it to another issue. The New York Times reports, Trump says Smithsonian focuses too much on, quote, how bad slavery was, end quote. Trump posted this on Tuesday, quote, the Smithsonian is out of control, where everything discussed is how horrible our country is, how bad slavery was, and how unaccomplished the downtrodden have been. Nothing about success, nothing about brightness, nothing about the future, end quote. Now, here's some coverage to that point. Let's play the video, please. Do we have the video? Okay, I'll just move on. I made the point.
At his lawyers to scour through America's museums to rid them of exhibits he considers woke, specifically citing exhibits on slavery. President Trump targeted the Smithsonian museums, saying they are, quote, out of control, where everything discussed is how horrible our country is, how bad slavery was, and how unaccomplished the downtrodden have been. Back in March, the president signed an executive order directing the Smithsonian Institution, which runs more than 20 museums in Washington and elsewhere, to, quote, celebrate American exceptionalism and remove divisive or partisan narratives. Last month, the Smithsonian removed references to Trump in an exhibit on presidential impeachment.
So, separate from this issue, but I believe tangentially related, MSN reports a Republican candidate in Georgia has shared a clip that describes the Atlantic slave trade as, quote, fake history, end quote. Stephanie Donegan, an African-American woman who's running to represent Atlanta's northern exurbs in the state Senate as a Republican, shared the conspiratorial clip in June. The video, which remains online, includes commentary from the MAGA-aligned rapper Waka Flocka Flame and another African-American who rejects the historical record of slavery in America. At one point, the video claims most slaves, quote, were actually white, end quote, not understanding, I guess, the difference between indentured servitude and slavery. Real quick, here's a bit of that video.
In my blood, I'm a Native American. So literally, I'm a Cherokee, I'm a Blackfoot, I'm a Red-tailed Indian. That's what's in my blood. A lot of people in America is indigenous people. You're not from Africa, American at all. My folks is not from Africa. And a lot of people in this room, folks ain't from Africa. What?
To be fair, this is an old clip that Ms. Donegan decided to resurrect and repost. What's the current value of this? I have no clue. My point to this is the power of narratives. Repeat a lie often enough, and it can endanger the truth. I've talked before about the noble lie from Plato's Republic. There is also another concept known as the big lie technique, which suggests that a large, outrageous lie, if repeated frequently, can be accepted as the truth by the public. Folks, that's why we connect the dots. On today's episode, the issue before us is the Friday fiasco in Alaska, the subsequent U.S. and European Union fresh details of a giant trade pact, which I see as more of a framework at this stage. And Trump told the world there would be severe consequences, quote unquote, if Russia's Vladimir Putin does not agree to peace in Ukraine. Well, that begs the question, what happened with all of that jingoistic rhetoric and saber rattling? Because last I checked, which was about 20 minutes ago, them missiles, they still be a-flying in Ukraine. My guest is a professor of economics emeritus at the University of Massachusetts, Amherst, where he taught economics from 1973 to 2008. He currently is a visiting professor at the graduate program in international affairs of the New School University in New York City. He is also the author of books including Understanding Marxism, Understanding Socialism, The Sickness is the System, and Understanding Capitalism, which you can find at Democracy at Work. He is, of course, Professor Richard Wolff. As always, welcome back.
Thank you very much, Wilmer. I'm very, very glad to be with you, and I look forward to the conversations. I learned something, and I'm grateful for it.
Well, not half as grateful as I am because of all that I heard from you. So it is a mutual admiration society, and I'm glad to be a member of it. Thank you. Let's start with your perceptions of what I have dubbed the Friday fiasco in Alaska, especially in the context of a lot of Western media, their so-called analysis of it. To me, it was such a bomb, such a dud, such a fiasco that many in the media seem befuddled and really unable to properly assess what happened or didn't happen. Professor Wolff.
Well, I think that's becoming a hallmark of both our foreign policy, our domestic policy. It's very extreme under Mr. Trump, but I don't think it's all about him. I think it goes back and has its roots in the fact that the United States is in a very bad situation, and it is handling its growing and deepening problems in a very unfortunate way, partly by denying that they're there, and partly by distracting everybody it can, themselves above all else, from facing the problem. That may be a human failing. Maybe we all, at a certain point, deal with problems by pretending they're not there, or by somehow distracting ourselves to other things that are less painful to look at. But, you know, when you have a country collapsing the way Ukraine is, if you have war, if you have people suffering the way we now know they are in many places, you don't have that luxury. So I'm not going to take it. I'm going to try to tell you what I think is going on. First of all, you're right. Most of what happened last Friday in Alaska was pure political theater. Nothing new was put on the table that I'm aware of, and I've studied the documents as I always do. There was a reiteration by Mr. Putin of what are now well-known Russian positions on all of this. He didn't say anything new that I'm aware of. Mr. Trump didn't say much, or at least they haven't revealed much of what he said. He did make one concession. And so there is this one thing that is new. And that is that whereas the Russians have said all along that they're not interested in talking about security guarantees for Ukraine coming out of this war, there will be no such things. They're not part of those such things. They are interested in a peace deal for all of Europe, including Ukraine. They'll talk about that, but they are not part of, and they will not permit individual Ukrainian peace guarantees or security guarantees. The Europeans have been making a mountain out of that molehill, and Mr. Trump sometimes goes along with them. On Friday, he said, no, we don't need. He gave that to Mr. Putin. And indeed, he got attacked, particularly in the European press, because Mr. Trump gave that, and nobody could figure out what he got in exchange. And so they couldn't figure out why would he do that if he didn't get anything. And then they reverted, which the Europeans like to do, to what I call psychologizing Mr. Trump. He's stupid. He doesn't understand democracy. He doesn't understand diplomacy. I don't find any of that very interesting. He's not the sharpest knife in the drawer, but he's not the dullest one either. We have a long history of competitors for that position. It's not really relevant. But here's the problem, and why your question makes perfect sense. Mr. Trump doesn't have a settled idea of what he wants or how to get it. He is the most changeable president I have ever lived through, and I've been around a long time. So, for example, we have deals with Canada and Mexico, carefully worked out arrangements for our trade. The most recent of which was achieved under Mr. Trump's first administration, and he signed them. He then violated them whenever he felt like it. So making a deal with Mr. Trump, he loves to call himself the master of the deal, but making a deal with Mr. Trump, more than any other president I know of, is no deal at all. It could be gone tomorrow. He raises the tariff. He lowers the tariff. He threatens more tariff. It won't go into effect until this date. Oh no, it'll go in on the other day. This is crazy. And it has been told to Mr. Trump that it's crazy. The Europeans lead the way with telling him that. But the Europeans are so weak, and I'd like to say a word about it, but they're so weak that they can't get anything. So yes, on the Saturday and the Monday after that Friday, the Europeans all met with Mr. Trump in his office. The photos from it look like a group of school children had been taken to the White House, and they could all sit and talk to dear Mr. President. He's sitting up there talking to them all as if they were children. And indeed, the humiliation of all that is a topic of intense conversation in Europe. I know that firsthand. People are calling me about it all the time. They can't quite understand the complete slavish collapse. The deal that was announced on Monday, the so-called trade deal that has now been quote unquote finalized, but they said earlier things were finalized, which turned out not to be. And knowing Mr. Trump, you'd have to assume this is no more final than the earlier ones. But here's what they basically said. Things coming from Europe into the United States will have to pay a 15% tax to Uncle Sam. Things coming from the United States into Europe to be sold there will have no tariff at all. Well, Okay, you don't really need to go into the minute weeds and details. That means the United States is extracting tribute from the Europeans.
Mm-hmm.
This game is going to be played. And the Europeans, their chief negotiator, gave a press conference right after the documents were signed. And here is what he stressed, that this deal we just got from America is better than anybody else's deal. Wow. That's all you have to. You just gave away the farm, and you say, gee, we could have given away even more, but we didn't, the way other people are. Wow. I mean, put aside whether it's true or not. What we are watching, and I'm sure many of the people are, watching and listening to your program will appreciate this. We are watching the final collapse of the historic importance of the continent we call Europe. This is it. They've lost the war in Ukraine. They are freaking out because Russia and the United States are discussing how to end the war in Ukraine, which is in Europe, and where the Europeans have spent a ton of money alongside the Americans and are losing anyway. And there they come, sitting around. The head of NATO called Mr. Trump Papa a few weeks ago, and that got ridiculed in the European press because it shows, call him Papa, because relative to him, you're the little kid. And the picture the other day in the White House just reinforced it. Europe is done from being the Renaissance center, from being the center of the colonialization of the whole world, the power that everybody in Asia, Africa, Latin America trembled before. It's all gone. It's all over. And they are not facing it. They are not admitting it. They are not even beginning to try to deal with it. They're too disunified even to talk publicly about it. And I tell you this, we're going to be seeing in the near future real big political changes in Europe because the mass of people there are turning against those governments. Mr. Starmer will be ancient history. Mr. Macron, likewise. In Germany, Mr. Merz. These people they're counting the days to retirement. They're talking the talk, but it's over, and they know it. And their own people are enraged watching them bend over and take it all. It's extraordinary what we are going through, even though here in the United States, you don't get very much of a feel for it.
You mentioned we're witnessing the end of Europe as a power. And in terms of fairly recent history, I would say we saw the beginning of the collapse with the United States blowing up the Nord Stream pipeline.
Yep.
Okay. If you would.
Yeah.
Why do you agree with that assessment of mine?
Well, it's very clear, every police detective who's worth anything will tell you that if you're confronted with a crime, the first thing that you ask yourself, if you're trying to solve it, is who's got an interest here? Who would, cui bono, who benefits from this crime? And it may not be that person or persons, but that's where you logically start. Okay. At enormous expense, Russia and Germany work out a relationship after World War II. And here's the basic relationship which people should understand. Germany is an advanced capitalist, technically, engineering focused kind of culture. So they figure they can rebuild from the devastation of losing World War II if they can get two things: money and cheap energy to fuel their manufacturing return, to keep their factories humming. The United States contributed the Marshall Plan money, got them going. And the Soviet Union, and then later Russia, when the Soviet Union disappeared, provided them with unbelievable supply, limitless supplies of the cheapest oil and gas on the planet, right next door. And they were building they had one pipeline that would literally run it through the North Sea from Russia right into Northern Europe. And they were about to build a second one, or they had built a second one. And then in some mysterious way, it blew up. Now, Germany didn't want to blow it up because it was Germany that benefited. That's where the pipeline ended. Cheap energy would now be even more available to Germany. And Russia didn't have any reason to do it because Russia sold that gas and oil to Germany, making an enormous contribution to the Russian economy.
And paid to build the pipeline.
Yes. So because
the pipeline ran through where? Ukraine.
Yes.
Just as a side note, and Ukraine extracted transfer fees
for another one, right?
And made hundreds of millions of dollars for allowing Russia to transfer that oil and natural gas across their territory to the North Sea.
Right. There are several pipelines because it's such a business that go from Russia, which has this, I believe, after Saudi Arabia, the number 2 most biggest supplies of oil and gas under its soil. You know, it's Saudi Arabia, Russia, and the United States. 1, 2, 3, they may vary, but they're the big ones in this game. So they had nothing to benefit. They had everything to lose and nothing to get. Who gained? Who gained was Joseph Biden, who let it slip once that when asked the question, what about that pipeline? He brushed it aside and said, that'll never happen. Okay, well, he probably knew something.
And who was standing next to him at the time the question was asked? The chancellor of the then chancellor of Germany, before Merz, Olaf Scholz was standing next to Joe Biden when a journalist asked Joe Biden, "What about that pipeline?" And Joe said, "Oh, that's not going to happen." And the journalist then said, "But wait a minute, Mr. President, that's not our pipeline." And Biden said, and Merz just stood there. I mean, Scholz just stood there like,
yeah.
Oh.
You see, that's a perfect, Will. That's what all the Europeans see that. They see that and they cringe. It's like, it's unspeakable humiliation for people who have thought of themselves, maybe exaggeratedly, as the center of world culture, but they've not just come down a peg, they've come down all the pegs there are, and they're falling off the ladder at this point. It really is extraordinary what we're walking through. And I believe what's going on is the following, and you've heard me say this before. The American empire is over. We're not as far down the pegs as the Europeans because their empire is older than ours, and their empire started declining just when ours was sort of taken off. So it's not the same timing, but the process is exactly the same. The United States has decided, wait a minute, no, we're in great shape. Watch us. We're gonna smite the Russians in Ukraine. Big mistake. You didn't smite anybody. You got smitten is what happened to you. And now you're trying to back out of the situation, dump it on the Europeans at the same time. Look at it. At the same time that you dump the costs of your own decline onto the Europeans, you're whacking them with tariffs. I mean, just to show you, we'll do anything we want to you. If all of this stuff stands, let me put it another way that maybe people can get. If all of this stands as it looks like it's going to, then you'd be crazy not to understand that the world is being given a lesson. When the United States has serious economic problems, it either cannot cope with or doesn't know how to cope with, it's going to dump them on its vassals. It's, if you pardon me, it's slaves, it's serfs, the poor that depend on them, like Europe. They're going to just say, oh, you're going to have to suffer it. You're going to have to do this. And they don't care how far down Europe goes, because they know that in some way the future is going to be how the United States interacts with China and the global South. That if you don't fix that problem, it's over anyway. That's where the majority of the people on this planet are. They're growing fast. They now have a technological, dynamo in China. More are developing in India. More will develop in all the rest of the, the United States is what it is. 4.5% of the people of this planet. The BRICS in China is over half over here, 4.5% over here. In the long run, that's an easy story. And the Americans keep pretending that it's not, they're going to decide that. I think half of what Mr. Trump is in there for is a game of delusion. He's going to act the tough guy. He's going to show he does whatever he wants. We're powerful. It's the desperate theater of people who don't know any other way to cope.
Two things. One, a lot will ask, why is Europe doing this? And you made the point earlier, the people are going to revolt because it's not the Europeans themselves, it's the European elite,
right,
who have now been convinced that the European standard of living, which once upon a time wasn't bad.
Yeah.
Vacations in October,
right,
free education,
right,
healthcare, not a bad standard of living if you could get it. Now they're shifting to neoliberalism, and they got to figure out a way to pay for this neoliberalism, because they have been convinced that the current social lifestyle that people in Europe have become accustomed to has got to change. Retirement at the age of, 62?
Yep.
You retire at 62, you live a nice life.
Yes.
Not anymore.
But that's,
am I right, Professor Wolff?
Absolutely right. And it's all covered by this hysterical anxiety about Russia. What are you doing? Russia is it's a joke. Russia doesn't have the money. It doesn't have the strength. It doesn't have the population. I want to remind people, the population of Russia is significantly less than that of the United States. This is not a huge, it's not China or India. It has nothing to do with that. Those are huge countries in terms of population.
Not landmass.
No, but population, and the land ain't gonna do anything without the people. Right. They're not gonna invade a Europe. They couldn't control a Europe. They'd be fighting, an occupation war every day, all day, and they'd lose that war, and they know it. Russia has mostly been invaded by Europe. Hitler invaded them, and Napoleon invaded them. They all lost, but they tried. But
wait a minute, because I think it's important also for people to realize, from the European perspective, Russia is not a part of Europe.
Right.
Europeans see Russians as Slavs.
Right.
Not as Europeans. And if you want to understand the etymology of the word slave, it comes from Slav.
That's right.
So Europeans look down upon Russians they are not considered Europeans.
Yes, and now that they've treated the Russians so badly, their leader, Mr. Putin, says we're Asians. He's basically saying our future lies with China and India and all the countries of Asia. But let's get back to the United States. There is no settled trade agreement because Mr. Trump is a specialist in saying up, down, now, no, on, off. So you'll never know if he gets in a jam. What he has learned is that he can do almost anything, and the Europeans lie down and are grateful he didn't do something worse. This is all, he can't deal with the Russians that way. He can't deal with the Chinese that way. He's learned now that he can't deal with Mr. Modi in India that way. But with the Europeans, oh boy. And the whole world sees it. It is a humiliation right up front. And you can see here in the United States the echoes, the absurd, if I can talk about it for a moment, the absurd.
In fact, before you do, let me get this question in so that please forgive me, Mr. Addison. Well, you'll know who you are by the way I pose the question. Professor Wolff, because I can't stumble through that name. It ends with 7264. Professor Wolff, how is the U.S. current grand strategy sustainable? I think that's where you're headed.
A great question, but I'm afraid my answer may disappoint you. It isn't.
Right.
This is not and it isn't really a strategy to solve a problem.
Correct.
It's a strategy that really is composed of an awful lot of make-believe. If I were a shrink and America was sitting on the couch, I'd shake them a little bit and say, it's going to be painful to face the reality. But in the end, that gives you a better chance of solving your problem and getting to a better place than continuing with this pretense that, everything is. You're not in a position to threaten the world. You're just not. The only thing you have is nuclear weapons. And if you use them, since there are enough of your enemies who also have them, the game is over for everybody. So that's not a win. And that's all you got. The rest you threw at the Russians in Ukraine, and you lost it. Your F-16s, your tanks, all your advanced electronic, everything, you lost. And you had the Europeans working with you. You still lost. I mean, you lost in Vietnam. You lost in Afghanistan. The war in Vietnam was fought against the Communist Party of Vietnam. You know who runs that country now? The Communist Party of Vietnam. The war in Afghanistan was against the Taliban. You know who runs the Taliban now? Who runs Afghanistan now? The Taliban. You get the picture? We're losing. The U.S. dollar is less of a force in the world than it was across your and my lifetime. What do you think that suggests? Americans are more and more dependent on buying things from other parts of the world. We don't have much of an advertising manufacturing sector anymore. Every one of the last 10 presidents has promised to bring back manufacturing, and not a single one of them was able to do it, and Mr. Trump hasn't done it either. So, if you're honest, you look at the economy. I'm a professor of economics, my job. You look at the economy. It's not that we can't solve these problems. We maybe could, but we're not busy doing that. We're busy protecting ourselves, putting barriers, tariff barriers. Let me give you an example. I may have done this once before. The electric car, right? It's the vehicle of the future. We're not going to be using fossil fuels forever. They pollute the air. They waste resources. They're a drag on health and well-being. So the world is shifting to electric cars. It started doing that 15 years ago, a competition among the car companies of the world. Again, to show you which way the world is going, we now know the winner. There is a company that has produced by far the best electric cars and trucks, at the lowest price. It's called the BYD company. It's Chinese, even though those letters BYD stand for Build Your Dream. That's actually what those words, what the initials come from. They produce a really first-rate electric vehicle for about $30,000. But Mr. Trump put a tariff on them when he was a president the first time. Mr. Biden raised that tariff to 100%. So if you want to buy a BYD car here in America or a truck for your business because you want the best, cheapest vehicle for your business to help you compete, well, you'd have to come up with 30 grand to get the truck brought here and another 30 grand, 100%, pay to Uncle Sam tariff before you can get the truck into your hands. So it'll cost you $60,000. What will it cost your competitors around the world? $30,000, because they don't have tariffs. So your competitors will get the truck for 30 that you have to pay 60. You know what that means? That means the United States, by putting these tariffs, is shooting itself in the foot. It may look good, we're hitting China with a tariff, but in economics terms, it's nuts. It's refusing to face the realities that we have. It's extraordinary what we are watching and what we are going through. And we can all applaud, if we're of a mind, that Mr. Trump is threatening everybody and hitting this one with a tariff and next one with a sanction. May make you feel like you're the big tough guy up on the hill. But you are not. This is desperation behavior. And it's going to disintegrate and take us down with it if we're not very careful.
Final point on this, again, Friday fiasco. I knew Donald Trump was in trouble when he announced he was going to talk to Putin. You're bringing a pea shooter to a gunfight.
Yeah.
But when Sergei Lavrov got off the plane with that sweater that said CCCP,
right,
folks, Donald Trump was in trouble. For those of you that don't remember, CCCP translates into Union of Soviet Socialist Republics.
That's right.
What used to be known as the Soviet Union. They were sending they were on former Russian or former Soviet soil. Alaska sold Russia, the Soviet Union sold Alaska to the United States. So it was former Soviet soil. We're landing on former Soviet soil, and the foreign minister has emblazoned on his sweater, CCCP. Donald, you're in trouble.
Yeah, yeah. And the humor and the irony of doing that, it's the behavior of a foreign minister who's not having a bad time. He's having a good time. He's the foreign minister of the country winning the war. He knows it. The way he talks, and I've seen him in a number of situations. He's very careful. He's very thoughtful. He articulates what he knows to be the winning hand in this situation. And when Trump a few months ago had that blow up with Zelensky, one of the things Trump said, which I thought was very revealing, he said to Zelensky at one point, you're playing a card game, except you don't have any cards.
You don't have any cards.
You're telling us what you're going to bet, but you got nothing. This is, what are you doing? Even a Trump could see. It reminds me. Don't try to BS somebody who's a specialist in BS, because they'll catch you doing that. And Trump could see another hustler across the table, except he had even less than Trump has to play. I know it's hard for Americans, and I really feel that way. I mean, I was born in Ohio. I've lived and worked in the United States all my life. I'm glad I'm here. but there is something really sad, and I mean that word. It's sad to watch.
Mm-hmm.
Not that we have difficulties. That's okay. Everybody does. We have our share. But the inability to face it, this desperate idea, we're going to go back to some make-believe golden age, make America great again. What are you talking about? Or maybe they really mean, when they resuscitate those Confederate general statues, that they really do want to go back there. Maybe with the story you began with, every oppressed group has always had a few people who try to go jump ship and go on the other side, saying what they imagine the other side wants to hear. I mean, that's sad too. But as a country, for real, you really think in this day and age, with the BRICS, with the whole rising of the colonial world, that you're going to squelch all of that? You've got to be nuts. That's the future. And you've got to accommodate it.
You use the word sad, and you're right. But what makes the sadness pathetic is the decline was brought on by your own action.
Yep.
And it makes me think about, I wasn't old enough to see him play, but it makes me think about the decline of Mickey Mantle. When, for those who don't know, the great center fielder, I believe, for the Yankees, and his career ended way too soon because he drank himself into non-relevance, and his famous quote was, "If I had known I was going to live this long, I would have taken better care of myself." And so every empire declines. Y'all can't show me, as my father would say, you can't get out of this thing alive.
Right.
But what makes the U.S. so pathetic is the empire, compared to the others, was less than 300 years versus 3,000.
Right.
And we've exacerbated and accelerated the decline because of our own hubris, arrogance, and just utter foolishness.
Yeah. And we ought to have learned. The British did that before us. The French did it before us. The Germans, the Belgians, the Dutch. Don't you learn something?
The Persians, the Greeks, the Romans, absolutely. The Ottomans.
Right. And they all, the good books about them, the histories, they denied their decline when it was underway. They tried desperately. The Roman Empire decided that everybody outside of Rome was a barbarian. What an interesting language. A barbarian, they're just like you. They used to be the people you controlled, and then you celebrated the food you got from them and the technologies you got. Now they're barbarians. But that's only because you're no longer able to control them. That's why they're barbarians. And eventually they broke through and destroyed Rome, these barbarians, because they were stronger and Rome had become weaker. And that's what's happening to the United States. But we're living through a time when a desperate people is led by a theater barker who acts out the tough guy. For all the people who see their world disappearing, he is the antidote who's going to fix it all. And of course, it isn't going to happen. It isn't happening now.
Mm-hmm.
You're already beginning to see the rising prices from the tariffs. Walmart had a bad day today in the stock market because it's raising its prices, and it says much more is coming. All right, I mean, that's where America shops, particularly people who don't have much. So, it's sad. For me,
mm-hmm.
I understand you're adding the word path. There is real kind of, in the Greek theater almost, sense of pathos,
mm-hmm.
When you bring about your own demise and you can't allow yourself to see it.
Kevin Baptist, thank you for that $5 super sticker. Professor Wolff, how much more do material conditions have to degrade, following up to the point you just made, have to degrade for the populace in the U.S. for the popular revolt against this BS?
My answer is I think it's already underway. And again, it's a question of seeing it. I'm talking to you from Manhattan. I live in Manhattan in New York City. And we have an example of people beginning to do unusual things because they're upset. They're upset about rents, which are out of control in New York City. I mean, they're too high across the country. But if you think they're too high wherever you are, come to Manhattan. I will show you they are. Wow, are they crazy here? And food is cost. They can't get by. And so in the Democratic Party primary a few weeks ago, the city of New York did something it never did before. We just gave an overwhelming victory to a Muslim man who supports Palestinian rights in the conflict in the Middle East, and who takes for himself the label socialist. And not only did he win, he won by a lot. And he won over the mayor of this city, an African American, and not him, but also Andrew Cuomo, who is kind of, a poster child of the centrist Democratic Party elite that normally wins these races. Indeed, Cuomo used to be the governor of the state of New York. But he defeated Cuomo, he defeated Eric Adams, and I'm talking to my neighbors here, and I'm saying to them, what do you think about all that? And what they tell me is exactly what you were leading up to, Wilbur, a moment ago. Things have got to change. This is a society that doesn't work anymore. The corruption is everywhere, top to bottom, and it's making it impossible for people to live. Young people have no future. The schools don't function. The rent is crazy. On and on and on. It's extraordinary.
And to that point, and let me also thank Chance Wilson 333, new member. Chance, thank you very, very much for joining us as we are steaming full speed ahead towards 10,000 members and subscribers. Thank you very much for being one more step in that direction. Let me quickly move to that issue. And because we see there are two stories that I wanted to that I wanted to tie together, and that is the Mamdani story. New poll in New York mayor's race has Zohran Mamdani with commanding lead. And remember, folks, he won the Democratic Party primary to be the mayor of New York, and now the other Democrats have turned on him. In a new poll in the race for New York City mayor shows Queens Assemblyman Zohran Mamdani with a commanding lead, 41.8% support, with Cuomo coming up second at 23.4%. I want to tie that to another poll. The Democratic Party faces a voter registration crisis. The Democratic Party is hemorrhaging voters long before they even go to the polls. Of the 30 states that track voter registration by political party, Democrats lost ground to Republicans in every single one between 2020 and 2024, and often by a lot. Dr. Wolff, do you see those two data points, or should we be connecting those dots?
Yeah, I think we should. And let me give you another way to understand it. I think most of those Democrats are not leaving the party or not joining the party out of an interest in or a desire for the Republicans.
Correct.
That's not what's going on. What's going on is that these are Democrats who are, and I don't use this word easily, but they're disgusted. I think they look at their own leadership. They watch one outrage of Mr. Trump after another, and they see the weakest sort of rebuttal. I noticed that the governor of California is beginning to up the rhetoric. I think he sees the same thing the rest of us see, that he better, and the others better, step up and do something, because otherwise this hemorrhaging is going to make the Democratic Party irrelevant. And here's the icing, if you like, on the cake of that argument. In another country that is arguably like the United States, perhaps more than any other, Great Britain, over the last several weeks, the unthinkable happened. Several members of their Labour Party, together with people who used to be in the Labour Party but were either left or were kicked out because they were too radical, have come together to form a new third party, so that British politics is not the old Labour, Conservative, and sometime now the Reform Party. They're about to do a new leftist party. They haven't decided on the name. But here's the thing that ought to blow you away. In the first 2 weeks of its existence, and this party is only a few weeks old, 300,000 British citizens signed up to be members. And that's about as many as are legally members of the Labour Party. Mm-hmm. So you're watching the very thing you asked about is unfolding. And when you look at what they're doing in Britain and why, or in other European countries, very similar. They're angry that their welfare, their standard of living is being taken away. They don't want to fight a war with Russia. They don't want the nonsense in Ukraine. They are against what they see as using the Russians as a stalking horse of some kind to justify a politics to protect corporations and the rich at the expense of the mass of people. And that's a pretty good description of what's happening here as well.
I want to follow up on a point you just made. First of all, MDub70, thank you very much for being a new member. You know, folks, if we could get 10 more new members before we get out of here today, that would be a wonderful thing. But Professor Wolff, when you listen to Zohran Mamdani, he's talking about it's too expensive to live in New York City.
Right.
I think we would call that a kitchen table issue.
Yep.
And it takes me back to, what was his name? Jimmy McMillan, a couple of elections ago, the rent is too damn high party. Exactly. And everybody laughed at Jimmy McMillan. Everybody just laughed and giggled and just brushed him off as a nut. And now you've got Zohran Mamdani getting ready to win the election in spite of the Democratic Party. But he's offering substance. He's not just coming to the mic saying Donald Trump is an idiot. Donald Trump is a fool. I think Donald Trump's breath smells bad. He's not saying that. He's speaking to the action. He's doing something Democrats can't figure out how to do. Speaking directly to the issues of his constituents. And he was asked at a debate whether or not he was going to go to Israel if he became the mayor of New York. And he said, why would I go to Israel? I'm the mayor of New York. I'm not the mayor of Tel Aviv.
Right.
Why would, and people go, oh, you're anti-Semitic. Oh, you're anti-Semitic. No. Why in the hell would I go to New York? I mean, why would I go to Israel? So, and final point on my rant, and that is, when Kamala Harris lost, James Carville was asked, what should the Democrats do? And Carville said nothing. He said the Democrats just need to sit back and let this thing implode. And now the data shows us the Democrats are hemorrhaging voters. Your final thoughts, Professor Wolff?
Yeah, I think you really hit the nail on the head with that. That Carville, he may have been a clever man with insights before, but that was not clever and that was not an insight. That was a terrible, terrible mistake, because he underestimates the determination of the Republicans. They see that their own policies are turning more and more Americans against them. They do see it. Mm-hmm. That's why they're so busy in Texas and Missouri trying to, redraw the district lines to make democracy a joke instead of a serious proposition. And you're seeing, by the way, and this is coming up in European commentary because Americans dare not face it. You're seeing what Europeans are calling the disintegration of the United States.
Correct.
You're beginning, these states are becoming outside the pale this way, and these other states are reacting, and you're seeing, this pretty soon there will be no way for Texas and California to relate to one another because they've built up a crazy level of animosity and of disinterest and lack of coordination. What are we going to have? Corporations deciding one way or another, making deals with Europe rather than Texas if you're California. I mean, the potential for disintegration. We're going to discover what every other country has. If you put enough stress on a society, it falls apart. People who could live together, who married each other, suddenly decide that they are the biggest enemies in the world, the neighbor they had for 50 years. You think that can't happen here? That's naive. Of course it can. And we're building up levels of pressure. It's really, really, really extraordinary what is happening to us. And the refusal to deal with it is for me the worst sign. I'm married to a psychotherapist, and one of the things she's taught me is that a problem you can have, everybody does. A refusal to face it only makes it worse.
And as we get out, you talk about the pressure on the society. And I believe, and this is the final dot I'm going to connect for the day, that the response to the pressure on society is federal troops in Los Angeles, federal troops in DC, threatening troops in Oakland, threatening troops in Chicago. These are test beds for what the government anticipates its response is going to be in anticipation of the public response to the pressures you're referring to. Take us out, Dr. Wolff.
Nothing around the world damages the United States, its economics, its politics, its ideology, as much as seeing pictures of American troops oppressing the American people. The rest of the world has been there, knows what that means, and that is a sign of a disintegrating culture. Do we really want that to be the framework within which our politicians supposedly are going to fix our situations? Don't believe it. It's not true.
Professor Richard Wolff, as always, thank you so much for your time. Greatly, greatly appreciate that analysis and truly look forward to having you back.
I do too, Wilmer, and thank you for having a program that is, unlike what we've been talking about, doesn't run away from looking at what has to be talked about.
Well, it's only because of guests like you that enable me to do it. So thank you so much. Greatly, greatly appreciate it. Thank you all so much for listening to the Connecting the Dots podcast with me, Dr. Wilmer Leon. New episode tomorrow, and Dr. Desai is going to join us tomorrow. We got the technical issues resolved, and Dr. Radhika Desai is going to join us tomorrow. Please follow and subscribe. Thank you all so much to those of you that subscribed today. We didn't get the 10 that I asked for, but hey, I'm grateful and appreciate what I got. So we're going to take that and run with it. Leave a review, share the show, follow us on social media. All the links are below in the show description. And remember, folks, the reason you're here is because this is where the analysis of politics, culture, and history converge. Because talk without analysis is just chatter. And with brilliant guests like Dr. Richard Wolff, we don't chatter here on Connecting the Dots. See y'all tomorrow. Until then, I am Dr. Wilmer Leon. Have a blessed remainder of your day. Peace. I'm out.
Connecting the Dots with Dr. Wilmer Leon, where the analysis of politics, culture, and history converge.